So yesterday, the New York Knicks got a very good overtime win over the New Orleans Pelicans, and that win extended their current winning streak to 6 straight games. This Knicks team has been one of the more slept-on teams in the league this season, and today, I think we should talk about why this team looks like they're for real, and just what they'll need to do in order to win a first-round playoff series this year. What's up, guys? SCJ here, and if you enjoyed today's video, then make sure to give it a like as it helps out a lot, and if you're new to the channel and or enjoy the NBA, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell. So yesterday, the New York Knicks win over the Pelicans that I mentioned before came in overtime as they won by 10 points after the team nearly scored 20 points in the overtime period alone. The final score was 122-112 Knicks win, and the Knicks win yesterday was really powered by Knicks big man Julius Randle as he really went off and made Knicks franchise history. Randle gave the team a little bit of everything as he dropped 33 points, grabbed 5 rebounds, dished out 10 assists, and grabbed 5 steals as well to really put the cherry on top of his dominant performance. After his performance yesterday, Randle became the first Knicks player since Carmelo Anthony with 4 straight 30-point games since Melo did that back in 2014. Not only that, but he became the first Knicks player since point guard Nate Robinson in 2009 to drop 30 points, dish out 10 assists, and grab 5 steals in a single game, which is insane to think about considering he's a forward/center and not a guard. Randle is averaging a career high in steals per game this year, so honestly, he's really excelled in that regard for the entire season. Randle is really having a great season, and he made his first All-Star appearance of his career with the Knicks this year, but over this Knicks winning streak, he's really taken it to another level as he's averaged 30.7 points, 8.5 rebounds, 7 assists, and 1.5 steals per game, and it's safe to say he's really been the primary reason that the Knicks have been so hot lately. While the Knicks have won 6 straight games, and I can understand if you feel this team is just having a hot streak and they'll eventually cool off soon, I think you have to realize that this team has actually played very good basketball this season and better basketball than most NBA fans have expected, to say the least. You can very well make the case that this Knicks team is one of, if not, the best defensive team in the entire NBA this season. During this season, the Knicks have really locked their opponents down as they have forced them to shoot the worst field goal percentage, forced them to shoot the worst three-point percentage, and have caused them to score the least amount of points of any team in the entire NBA. They're also averaging almost 2 less points given up to their opponents per game than the second-place team, the LA Lakers. Their opponents are also getting the 5th least amount of assists per game, which makes sense with how poor their opponents are shooting. And the Knicks are also allowing their opponents to get the 3rd least amount of steals of any team in the entire NBA this season. To further show just how good this team is defensively, let's look at the team's specific defensive numbers. Overall in the season, the team has garnered the 3rd best defensive rating in the whole NBA. Then the team is top 10 in every other defensive category on the year. So far during the 2020-21 NBA season, the Knicks are giving up the 6th lowest amount of opponents' points off of turnovers, the 8th lowest amount of second chance points given up to their opponent, the absolute lowest amount of points off of fast breaks to their opponents, and they're giving up the 4th lowest amount of points in the paint on the season. That's very impressive stuff, and in terms of their points in the paint, it's important to remember that even with them giving up the 4th lowest amounts in that regard, the team has also missed one of the league's best shot blockers in the NBA, Mitchell Robinson, as he's missed nearly half of the season as he's only played in 31 of the team's 58 games played so far. So when the team is at full health, that amount of points given up in the paint very well will be a smaller number, as Robinson has a career average of 2.1 blocks per game, and he's averaging 1.5 blocks on the year. In terms of where this team is thriving in terms of their own offensive numbers or just their own averages, this team has really thrived in rebounding the basketball as they have averaged the 6th most rebounds per game on the season, and they're also averaged the 9th least amount of turnovers, which is very solid also. However, overall in the season, they're not top 10 in any other stat aside from 3-point percentage, as they've shot the long ball at the 6th best percentage for the entire season. Now this is where we're going to start talking a bit about the team's flaws. During the 2020-21 NBA season, the Knicks have averaged the 4th lowest amount of points per game and the 9th lowest field goal percentage in the whole league. They've also struggled from the free throw stripe as they've shot the 13th worst percentage in that regard for the whole year. And despite the fact that the Knicks are a very good defensive team and Randle has averaged a career high in steals, the Knicks are the 14th worst team in that regard on the season. So obviously that's not very good whatsoever. Over this recent run, though, the team has played very good offensively, as they are a top 10 team in 3 areas that they've struggled this season, which is points per game, free throw percentage, and blocks per game, which is very good to see from them. Now, I will say, in terms of those numbers, it should be noted that 2 of the 6 games that we're talking about went into overtime, so they had longer than the typical regulation amount of time to score and rack up their stats. Now, this team does have many flaws this season, as you probably should have expected, as they're 13th in terms of the least amount of rebounds grabbed by their opponents, so they definitely could improve in that regard. And it also doesn't help that their opponents are averaging the 5th most blocks per game against them. 2 other areas I think are big and they need to improve on before the playoffs are their opponents' turnovers and their opponents' fouls drawn against them per game. In terms of turnovers, they're causing their opponents. Their opponents are turning the ball over the 6th least amount of times, and the Knicks have fouled their opponents the 5th most times per game this season, and their opponents are shooting the 11th most free throws per game as a result of that. So this Knicks team does have their flaws, but I think it's time we talk about why this is a tough Knicks team that we're seeing and just what it would take for them to pull off a first-round upset in the 2021 NBA playoffs. During this 6-game winning streak, while it is a very small stretch of games, the team has also won 7 of their last 10, and they've shown that they have what it takes to close out games in the clutch, as they beat the tough Grizzlies in overtime as well as the Pelicans in overtime yesterday. Beyond just that, they've also begun to really score the basketball more lately, and that's been a really big thing for them, especially when they've allowed their opponents to score the least amount of points in the entire league. So if Randle can continue to score the ball around the same amount of points that he's averaged during this stretch, and everyone else can do their part to help out, that would be huge for the Knicks, as they have 6 players averaging double-digit point totals so far during this stretch, and 9 players averaging 5 or more points per game over the last 6 games. Now, I'm not sure if Randle will be able to score the basketball like he has for an entire playoff series, but he has done it over the span of 6 games, which is only 1 game less than a playoff series could possibly go, so really, anything's possible. Now, as of right now, the Knicks would be set to face off against the Milwaukee Bucks in the playoffs, and I'd probably still pick the Bucks to win that series, but this Knicks team has played very well against Milwaukee, as they beat the Bucks in the beginning of the season. Then they also beat the Bucks less than a month ago, but it's important to note that that came without many of the Bucks starters, and the Bucks got a huge win over the Knicks in the beginning of March. So if the Knicks play the Bucks, I think the Bucks will win that series, but I think the Knicks could possibly take 2 games off of them in that series and make it competitive. Then if the Knicks are able to grab the 5th seed somehow over the Celtics, who are insanely hot right now, I think that the team might have what it takes to upset the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks are a very potent offensive team, especially as of late, as Bogdanovic has really gone on a tear. But the Hawks have really struggled defensively, despite Clint Capella's dominance down low. So while the Hawks still might be the favorite in that series, I think the Knicks definitely have the ability to upset the Hawks and make it into the second round of the playoffs in that matchup. The only question is, will they actually be able to pull off the upset? With how great their defense is, if they just improve on some of the flaws I mentioned in this video and just play similar to how they've played lately, then there's a very good chance they could do just that. So this Knicks team does have their flaws, and they still won't be the favorites in a playoff series as of right now. But if they play similar to how they have lately, and this recent stretch has truly been them starting to come together even more and get hot, then this team really is a team that can cause some trouble in the 2021 playoffs, and I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up making it to the second round of the playoffs this year. So anyway, guys, I want to know, though, what you guys have thought about the Knicks' level of play lately, their level of play this whole season, or anything having to do with the team down below in the comment section. Like mentioned before, though, if you like this video, then make sure to give it a like, as it helps out a lot. And if you're new to the channel and or enjoy the NBA, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell. That way you stay up to date with my newest content. Anyway, though, guys, I'm SCJ, and I am out. Peace.